Welcome to Build Series Sydney. My name is Danny Clayton, and joining me right now, an Olympian, an actor, an artist, Jake Ryan. Please make him feel welcome.
Not quite Olympian.
Well, look, I'm going to throw the Olympian title in there. You were
Just to clarify, I didn't quite get there.
A Taekwondo master.
A long time ago.
I reckon you can take that title. Just roll with it.
Yeah, you know what? Go for it.
Yeah. Well, of course, you'd probably be most well known for your roles on a prolific amount of shows on television, and now this incredible new Kiwi film, Savage. Can you tell us a little bit about what is going on in this latest film?
Yeah, Savage is amazing. I think we're premiering at London Film Festival the next week or 2 weeks or so. It's an amazing story based off it's based off true stories of the gang culture and the rise of the gang culture in the 70s, 80s and 90s. So it goes through 3 decades, and it's really raw, it's real, it's really powerful. And it was a hell of a time to shoot. And yeah, I'm yet to see a full cut of it, but it is, I think we might have something a little bit special there, I think.
Yeah, great. Yeah. So you've obviously spent a fair bit of time over in New Zealand, which is apparently still to this day, there's like a huge amount of gang culture and fights and wars going on all the time. What did you learn about Kiwi gang culture?
I spent quite a bit of time over there. I would go over on the weekends. We'd finish filming on a Friday at home and away, and I'd go over on the weekend and spend a weekend with rehearsals or hang out with gang members. We kind of had to get a bit of a tick of approval, and spend time with them to really get to know these guys and what makes them tick and what they're like. And what you think you see on the exterior of a lot of these gang members, but underneath them, they're like there's some pretty soft teddy bears there, which was really nice to see and find that these guys, they have a human element as well. Because the film really goes down that sort of path as well. It's not just these big, tough, crazy, scary guys. It really, it explores why they are who they are, why they've turned into these animals. So just to meet some of these old guys and listen to their stories of childhood and what they've gone through, and that was pretty heartbreaking. So it was, it opened me completely up to seeing them more as human beings.
Yeah, what were some of these wild stories that you heard?
Look, these guys, like not all of, the ones that I spoke to, I remember speaking to one guy, he was a big ex-sergeant of arms for one of the gangs. He'd probably be in his 60s now, like big face tattoos, massive guy, spent half his life in jail. I asked him about his childhood, and he sort of stared at me quite blankly, and I thought I was in a lot of trouble. And he just started crying. And he's like, no one's ever asked me about my childhood. Like, no one ever has like asked me what I went through as a kid. And I mean, the Savage starts off with my character in a Borstal home. They're like orphanages, the Borstals over there. There was rape, these kids used to get beaten at the age of 2, raped at the age of 2, from family members through to government people, through police. They got treated like animals since they were a kid. And this guy had never had a human touch before in his life, or a mother's touch. His first human contact was a Borstal master belting him and raping him that he can remember. So he's, a lot of us are lucky enough our first touch is, usually by your mum or, your dad or a family member that loves you. A lot of these guys had no chance from the day they were born.
Yeah.
So there's no wonder that they've, turned into animals.
So it seems that you really did delve quite deep, and you managed to clearly earn a fair bit of respect amongst this crowd. I mean, how did you get these people to open up and to trust you with these kind of stories?
We just sort of, for one, the biggest thing that and no word of a lie here, the biggest thing was that a lot of them watch Home and Away.
Get out of town.
No, I'm telling you, like
no.
Home and Away.
Well, they're big fans of Robbo. Did people call you Robbo?
Yeah, they were fans of Robbo because he's he's a quintessential bad guy. And at that time, what was airing, I wasn't a federal agent. Still, I was still a bad tough guy with tattoos on Home and Away.
Yeah,
I mean, Home and Away is massive in jails in Australia and in New Zealand. I mean, it's got sun, sand, beach, girls in bikinis. It ticks all, and they all sit down and watch it.
Yeah,
7 o'clock comes it on, whether or 5 o'clock in New Zealand. they all sit down. They're all sitting there watching Home and Away in the big house.
No way.
Yeah, it's pretty much the staple show of the criminal.
The gang, criminal underworld of New Zealand.
That was a really big eye opener for me. But that was probably actually the first thing that really broke a bit of ice on that.
Wow.
Because it was a bit standoffish, not standoffish, but then a few of them are like, "Oh, can I get a photo, Robbo?"
No way.
And I was like, "Oh yeah, no worries." And then the next, then more of them, but they were lovely. There's a different culture in New Zealand to like gangs in Australia. I think these guys are, just by nature, they're big, hearty men. That family's really important to them. They've got a lot of love to give. I'm not justifying any of the atrocities that may have committed in their gangs, but they're big, soft teddy bears, and they're lovely guys. They treated me really well. There's not that bravado that you get with Australian sort of gangsters and criminals. They're very quite stoic, and they're warriors by nature. And they sort of they don't say much. They don't raise their voice too much. They were just really soft guys, but you don't want to cross with them.
I mean, did you ever get scared at any point? Was there any moments where you felt like, okay, you could be in a little bit of trouble here?
No, not at all. I mean, we didn't. No, not at all. They were lovely. You probably get more trouble walking down the street at night time in Sydney. You feel more unsafe. And we filmed a lot around Porirua in New Zealand, which is one of the main sort of areas for the mongrel mob there.
Yeah.
And we never had any trouble. Like, they were. The thing is, we're telling their story too. It's not. Savages is I think is going to be eye opening for a lot of people because it tells the story of these guys as kids and why why the gang started, and no one's told that story before. They always just paint them as this brutal picture, which they quite often are brutal, but they respected the fact that we're telling all their story, whether they were different, Black Power, mongrel mob, headhunters, the other gangs. It was universally we were telling their story of where a lot of them all came from in the 60s and 70s. So it's.
Because you're playing Danny, a gentleman who has to bounce from gang to gang to survive.
Danny. We come to. He starts off as Danny. When I sort of take hold of him, he's Damage. That's his name. That's his gang name.
Okay.
He's one of the founders of the gang Savages, which is loosely sort of based off gangs like Mongrel Mob, Black Power, that kind of thing. So there was quite a lot of the Pakeha founder members as well. So they weren't all just Māori or Polynesian, which I don't find that I'm not playing a Māori or a Polynesian. I'm playing a white Kiwi guy, which they call them Pakeha. But yeah, no, it's basically his story of choosing to get out, go find his real family, or stay with the family that that has been his family for the last 20 years with his best mate Moses, played by John Tui. So, yeah.
So you've made a pretty huge transformation from the shots and the stills I've seen in this film. You've got the face tattoos going on here, which...
Yeah, it was pretty full on.
Clearly got some laser before this interview, which is nice.
Oh, no, I just got a little touch-up. Foundation work's amazing.
Yeah, it covers those
natural
tats.
glow. If you haven't tried it, get involved.
Because, of course, in the Kiwi culture, there's so much significance held on the tattoos.
Yeah, that's one thing I did learn, actually. The difference between a lot of the gang tattoos and the mokus are the traditional ones that tell the story. A lot of the gangs... they're not the moku tattoos. They are just gang stamps. So there's not really any cultural significance to them, but they would get them in jail, or they get them, as part of their, alliance and their support towards a gang for life, which is pretty hectic.
Yeah,
getting it across your face. Like the director gave me an exercise when we sort of started filming. He kept telling like less. I don't want you to do anything, and I was getting quite frustrated. And I was like, I feel like I'm giving you a cardboard performance. And he stopped production. He goes, we're going for a drive, and I had all my kit on, all the patches, all the face tats, the mullet, and he dropped me off to the equivalent of like Bondi Junction, Westfield, out the front. He goes, I'll pick you up on the other side in 20 minutes. I was like, you're kidding me. He's like, no, go for it. So I walked in there. I was more terrified of everyone else in there because of how I looked. But people were parting ways, and you got big groups of guys that would turn their backs to you. Like, people were terrified, and I was actually getting quite I was the one that was scared inside. I wasn't trying to walk through being tough. I just wanted to get through the other end. And you go psychologically, it's a really weird thing because then you start wanting to connect to people, but no one wants to connect to you, so you feel really isolated. And then so by the end of it, I was starting to sort of resent everyone that I was walking past because I'm like, you don't know me. I'm not a bad guy. Don't judge me because of these tattoos. And that's how these guys like live their lives. But by the time I got through the other side and he picked me up, I completely changed my idea of, he's like, you don't need to do anything. People are terrified of the way you look and the history that comes behind, So just trust me. And I did trust him, and I hope it works.
All right, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
But it seems like that's a role that you really encompass quite well. Dare I say, the tough guy. Is this something that you're mindful of? Are you happy being the tough guy?
I'm probably the complete opposite in real life. I'm not tough at all, but I love playing the tough. Like usually, if they're written well like that or like Robbo, there's so many. They're multi-layered and they're not just straight out tough guy. There's reasons. You got to find the reason why they make these decisions that they do that call themselves bad guys. You have to justify every bad thing that they do, but I just find it a lot more enjoyable to find the humanity in a darker character and what makes him tick, and then finding the nice bits in him as well, which makes it. But if they're written well and they're more complex and they've got more layers in them, I just find them really interesting and fun to play.
And it's interesting because I don't think I've ever met a New Zealander that I didn't like. So
I've got a saying. To this day, I've never met a bad Kiwi.
Yeah.
Yeah, I still haven't.
You've just played bad ones,
No, but he's a good. When you watch it, he's a good guy. He's just, he's just a bit troubled.
I mean, why do you think Kiwis seem to be taking over Hollywood at the moment? I mean, you look at the incredible work that Taika Waititi has done, of course, Jermaine and Brett, and it seems like right now a real kind of hot commodity is Kiwis.
And I think that I said it to a bunch of the guys over there, the crew, and I was like, you guys are making, and they were like, oh, you guys make amazing films. But they're not afraid to give up-and-coming writers and directors a shot and give them support over there. Sometimes here it can be a bit hard to get a foot in the door in the film world, especially as a writer. Like I've been working on a couple scripts as writing with some mates. It's hard to get a foot in the door unless you've sort of part of the club. In New Zealand, I think it seems a bit more open. They don't make as many films though, so that the competition's not as big over there for them to get something made. But they're just good storytellers, and they work hard. And yeah, I don't know, they've got some really good films out there, Kiwi ones.
So what are you writing at the moment? Anything you can tell us?
Well, I've got a film that it's written. We're at pitching stage at the moment. It's called Leopards. It's based off an event that happened to my family when I was growing up. Our house sort of got attacked randomly by a bunch of guys that came back a few times and sort of trashed the house, and it got quite nasty. And it was a complete random attack. So it's based off that. Probably 2/3 of it is very factual from my eyes as a kid growing up. So we've sort of got that in the mix, and then. The other one that I'm working on is it's a story about a boxer who moonlights as a drag queen, which I think would be. Any excuse. I just want to play a drag queen. Any excuse to dress up and So there's a couple of us working on that, and I think that's got some legs. It's
I do have so many questions pop to mind right now. Have you done drag before?
No, I haven't.
You've never done?
I think it'd be so much fun.
Do you have a drag name? Because that's the first thing you need. Get.
If I tell you my drag name, then you'll think that I've done it before. No. I came up with this name at I was at Playground Weekender a few years ago. It was one of the last Playground Weekenders, I think. And have you done?
I was there.
You would have done a Playground Weekender,
yeah.
And you have to dress up in costume on one of the days, and I didn't have a costume, so I just went to the local op shop, and I got an old lady sort of outfit. I had a wig and old pearls and a dress and a handbag, and I put lipstick on, and I think I had cons on as well. I didn't have the high heels, but I called myself Deliriously Delightful Dolores.
Oh.
So if I ever get Queen of the Ring, which that's what it's going to be called, up, there'll be a character in there called Deliriously Delightful Dolores.
Well, Delightful Dolores, I'm sure would get along very well with my drag name, which is just Fanny. But
I'm surprised I haven't met at a festival.
yeah, you probably have. You just didn't know.
Yeah, there you go.
But I did want to talk about leopards, particularly because this sounds like quite a traumatic thing to happen
really
to you
was,
as a kid.
Yeah.
And I know that you were quite young when you became interested in martial arts.
It's all around the same time, yeah.
Yeah, so did that inspire your interest in self-defense?
Definitely. It was, my dad grew up in Coburg in Melbourne and grew up in rough pubs. My grandpa owned ran pubs right near Pentridge and a few places like that. So they sort of they grew up knowing how to look after themselves from a young age. They're not criminals or thugs or anything, but it was just a different way of growing up, and I never had that. And this sort of incident happened, and I was only about 9, I think, but I felt really powerless even leading up after the couple of years afterwards. Not that what would a 9-year-old do in a situation like that anyway, until you read Leopards, then you see what a 9-year-old kid is capable of.
That is very foreboding.
But I actually have changed my character to a young girl as well. I think it's a lot more powerful by the end of the film.
Fantastic.
Anyway, but yeah, that inspired me. My uncle was an Australian champion at the time as well in Taekwondo. So it was all around the same time. Yeah, and I got into it when I was about 5, though, I think.
Mm. And you took that to a pretty high level when it comes to
I suppose I think I got 4th in the world a few times.
4th in the world.
So yeah, it was a bit of something. But I never cracked the world championship medals. So I feel like I don't feel like I'm not satisfied with my career then. Because
you're disappointed with 4th in the world.
Bitterly disappointed. I never got to the Olympics and I never got a world championship medal.
Okay.
I failed as far as I'm concerned.
Oh,
but I learnt a lot. So
yeah, and you couldn't proceed further because you suffered a knee injury.
Yeah, I did my ACL on this bad boy in 2007, not long before Beijing. So it sort of took me out of contention for that. And it's been giving me trouble ever since. So thanks, Taekwondo.
It's pretty funny because your life almost seems like a dramatic home and away storyline. Which is fitting because your storylines are pretty wild in Home and Away. In fact, I'm pretty sure that there is I think there's like an online club that compiles all of your wild...
Oh, there's a thing called the Robbo Files. The writer, Lou Bowers, like the head writer, she's got this thing called the Robbo Files because it's one of the most convoluted storylines and character arcs and developments she's ever come across, or she wrote it. It's her fault. So, but it's really interesting. We sat down and spoke about it the other day, and yeah, there's about 4 different personas. There's like undercover lives. There's actual life. There's it's really confusing.
It's quite funny because I spoke to another Home and Away actor about you and about your character.
Oh yeah, who was it?
Jackson Gallagher.
I
use him
I've never met Jackson, but I know his work.
I use him as like my Home and Away professional kind of viewpoint. And he's like, well, as an actor in Home and Away, you kind of always have to try to keep yourself creatively inspired and you have to push yourself. So, having a role like that would be really, really great because you can put a lot of energy. Is this something that you agree with?
Yeah, definitely. But the good thing was that we developed Robbo as we went pretty much. So I didn't know much about his backstory, because I was only going to stay for 6 months to start with. And the character was going to be very different. I think he was going to be he was sent as a hitman. So it all changed as, as time went on. And so we would develop, the writers were developing it, month by month. So it was a great way to do it because you just got to work with what you've got. You can't get too carried away with everything that's gone on behind you. So, yeah, I couldn't have picked for a better character on the show. It's been awesome.
And from my knowledge, you kind of took to acting quite late in your career, if you will. And you're trained by someone relatively significant in the Australian acting scene, a gentleman that played such roles as Dr. P. Sherman from Finding Nemo, but also Red Dog, Priscilla, Queen of the Desert. Do you know who I'm talking about?
Yeah, Billy.
Billy.
Bill, yeah. I mean, it's Bill's fault that I got into this game, so thanks, mate. I thank him every day, and sometimes I curse him. he didn't actually give me lessons or anything. He just became a really close sort of family friend, like a godfather figure that sparked an interest, in my career, because he used to be an Olympic level swimmer.
He had the world record at one stage.
He had it for 10 minutes over Murray Rose. He held the world record. And I met Bill when I was fighting, so he'd sort of, I think he might have seen a bit of him in me, young, coming from an athletic background. It was his idea that I'd get into acting, which I used to laugh at him when he'd mentioned it to me. I remember I met my now agent Mark Morrissey when I was probably 17, had no inclination or desire to be an actor, and Bill was like, "Mark, you'll be looking after him one day." And I was like, "I have no idea who any of you guys are." Bill's just a mate, and it turned out that he just planted a seed. He didn't sort of open doors or anything. He just, I remember ringing him, telling him that I wanted to. I went and had a beer with him up in Bendigo at he has had a place up in Eaglehawk there, and he used to frequent a few venues there quite often, and we'd go up and have a few beers with him and stay the weekend. And I was telling Bill, I got really excited. I was like, "Yeah, I want to go to NIDA. I want to audition for drama school." And he just slammed his beer down. And he's like, "You'll only ever find me going drama school on a motorbike, in the door and straight out the back door on the same motorbike." And he just said, "Look around this bar. He's like, you'll learn more about human nature and people if you just talk to people outside your comfort zone from all walks of life." And he's like, "Then you will stuck in a room with 25 people." But I mean, everyone's got their own ways of learning. But that's definitely something I carried away with him. That it doesn't matter who you're talking to or who you meet, whatever. Everyone's got their own different life experiences.
Sure.
So it's I learned a lot from him.
And everyone seems to have advice that they'd pass on to other actors. And I always find it very fascinating asking different, or even musicians or actors or anyone that's gotten to a certain level of professionality, that how did you get there? And it's like, how would you suggest other people to get there?
I feel like I've worked pretty hard now for over 10 years to get to a position where I don't have to do any other job. That's just at the moment. I mean, that can change, that can change pretty quickly when you're not working. I'm really stubborn and pig-headed too, I think. I think that's helped me a lot because I just have not said no for an answer and have just kept going. I've sort of had an idea and a dream, and even when, I'm sure it's probably a lot wiser decision to finish a building apprenticeship or something, or finish one of the 4 university degrees I started. But I just kept focused on the prize. And I mean, if I was to give anyone advice now, I'd probably say finish your school, go get a trade, finish your apprenticeship. If you still want to do it when that's all done and you've got that in your back pocket, then have a crack. But
I mean, you were talking about working towards a goal. I hear that you had your sights set on a pretty incredible role. Could be hearsay.
Oh yeah, it got a bit carried away, but yeah, I'd always want to play Batman.
You mean Batman?
Batman. Yeah, I'm pretty excited though about Robert Pattinson. I think that's as wild as Heath Ledger getting cast as a Joker, and I think he's going to do a pretty good job. Yeah, I think I'm excited to see what he does with Batman.
Sure.
But yeah,
I mean,
but
Batman.
I'd take him, I reckon.
The role though, I guess, is what is very appealing because it is action-packed. It would be physically taxing, and it seems like this is something that you're drawn towards. Something with a little bit of physicality.
Yeah.
Would I be right? I
love the physical side of, especially someone like Robbo, it's tested me physically more than I thought I would. And I love the stunt stuff. I love getting in there with stunt guys, and the fighting side. I get to use some of my background as well. I mean, it'd just be like my penultimate role. It would be that kind of thing, whether it's Batman or something similar. That kind of world. But he's dark as well. I like the dark guys. So
I've got some really interesting visuals right now in my head of Batman choking someone out with a taekwondo kind of move. Not really kind of Batman-y, but sure, you mix it in.
Yeah, exactly. Why not? You've got to evolve, right?
Yeah,
UFC's getting bigger and bigger, so maybe Batman can be a UFC fighter.
So we do have some questions coming in. We had some Q&As from the audience, and they are as follows. Have you ever gone in for a script reading for Home and Away and been really shocked or are you just used to the crazy, vivid storylines?
No, as in when I've auditioned in the past. Is that?
Just for reading the scripts out, I think.
No, not anymore. Not with Robbo. I think every week it was just getting more crazy and convoluted. That I'd be like, okay, here we go.
Aliens,
sure. This is great. I mean, sometimes, but that's a bad answer. No, I think I knew what I was getting myself into with his craziness from the first 6 months. So, yeah, you can just laugh at it though.
Another one coming in. I saw you're about to be a dad. How do you prepare for that new role?
I don't know. Does anyone want to help me? How do I prepare for being a dad? I don't know. We're getting there. We'll figure it out as we go, I think. I've got 4 nephews, so I think maybe that's given me a little bit of an idea, but I think I'm in for a bit of a shock. A welcome shock, though.
Just not sleeping, I hear. Maybe if you just spend a few weeks raving at night time to get yourself prepared for the lack of sleep.
I'm trying to sleep as much as I can now to make up for it, but...
What was it like starring in The Great Gatsby alongside Leo and the likes?
Well, if you've seen the movie, if you blink, you will miss me.
But what was that like?
It was amazing. It was like for one scene with, a line of dialogue, I think it took about 3 weeks to shoot. So it was a pretty awesome experience, though. The best part about that was to see, and Leo was great. He was so friendly and welcoming, and he read off camera to me, which I didn't think he would. He was cool, and to see someone like him stuff up a line or work at it, working on stuff on set with the director was pretty cool, because you just don't think those guys are. Do you think they're non-human? To just see them actually work and do exactly the same thing we do, and they're just very good at it. But just to see that he's a human being. Yeah.
So I guess the question is, like, he did stuff up a line or two. Did Leo bung a line?
I don't know if he bunged a line, but I mean, we had a few takes and stuff. Like, he had a massive 3-page monologue in the car. If anyone knows the film, he's driving there with Tobey Maguire's character, and they're going through the city and over Brooklyn Bridge, and there's a lot of dialogue and a lot of action, and a lot of times like everything had to hit the right point with the green screen and the stuff that they've filmed. If he stuffs up once every now and again, anyways, Leo, he can do whatever he wants, right?
Yeah, true. I'm not sure if you've seen Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Not yet.
But Leo does have a scene where he does bung a few lines. I feel like it's very accurate representing characters in actors in film. What do you think will be the next character to be written out of Home and Away in an ultra dramatic way? Oh gosh, that's a cheeky question.
I don't think I could answer that, because what they're good at is that they're very good at writing stuff that you don't expect as well. So I'm sure when something like that happens, I probably won't expect to read it. And you never know with Home and Away.
I'd love to see how they come up with those storylines. So they all just get together,
they have a plotting room, which I used to try and get involved in, and I was quite. I used to harass the writers a lot, or like, what are we up to? What's coming up for me? What are we doing? What are you guys thinking of Robbo? But they're quite collaborative with it, and you can bounce ideas off them. 9 times out of 10, they say thanks, and it doesn't happen. But I always wanted to get into the plotting room and just see how that unfolded, because I think that'd be pretty interesting.
Are there any ideas that did go to script?
Well, when we both decided that I would stay a bit longer than the initial 6-month contract, because I was meant to be a hitman to start with, I had a bit of an idea of, why don't we do him undercover, and he could have been a federal agent that does it. And then I sort of pitched at the same time they were coming up with the same idea as well. So that's what they said. Maybe I'll take credit for it though.
Sure. Look, this might be...
Sorry, Lou, I'm not taking any credit for that.
This might be a cheeky question, but can you give us a little bit of a warning of what is on the cards for Robbo?
Or coming up for Robbo, it doesn't stop. It just gets like... Trouble follows him everywhere he goes, and he tries so hard to, make a good life for him and Jasmine and his friends in the Bay. But we've got a wild ride coming up for the next while for Robbo. I had so much fun filming the stuff that's starting to air now, I think, and it'll take us out for a while. But yeah, there's a lot of Action Man Robbo's back.
Sweet. Yeah. Sounds good. And final question on the Q&A. Have you had any crazy fan experiences after being on Home and Away? Any unusual experiences?
Not crazy. I mean, the best thing about Home and Away is the loyalty of the fans. They're incredible. Like, people come from all over the world, do these tours when we're out at Palm Beach. They jump on the Flaming Glass tour, and these guys literally will fly out for 2 days from the UK to come and watch the scene of Home and Away. And I didn't realise how big it was overseas, and I met some young kids yesterday actually out at Avalon Palm Beach Way. They knew more about Home and Away, like detail and Robbo's storyline, than I could possibly imagine. Like, they knew more about Robbo than I did. Yeah. So it's just really impressive how much they actually love the show. Yeah, it's blown me away.
I mean, maybe they just came to see one of Who Magazine's 2019 sexiest people in the world, which happened to be right here in front of me. Look, I wasn't going to let you leave this interview without me bringing that up.
No, I don't think it was sexiest. No, I think you got it right.
Most beautiful people.
But it was more... no.
Sorry. I stand.
I think
corrected.
sexy. I think sexy. You got to get your kid off.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and I didn't have to do that.
So for the most beautiful,
I think it's for maybe some of the not so attractive older ones that they throw in there to make us feel better, and let the young kids get the sexy awards.
Who's given you the most hell for getting that title? One of Who Magazine's most beautiful people.
I've probably my mates most of my mates are non-actors, and that like anything I do is just absolute fuel for them. So doesn't matter if it's good, bad, or indifferent. Anything they do, they find like, oh, here we go. Yeah. We got some gold here, Jake, and I'd cop it. But you need that. It's great. I love it.
Now, before I let you go, I do have one last question. I wanted to ask you a little bit about Eleanor and this whole thing that you're working on at the moment, which is about raising some cash for a young girl. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah.
Be better with your words.
Eleanor Oakley's a young girl. She's a daughter of good friends of mine, Rob and Jackie. She's 3 years old now. She was born 18 months after she was born. She was diagnosed with stage 4 neuroblastoma, which is a really aggressive form of cancer that hits for childhood cancer. And since then, she's had a couple brain tumours taken out. She's been to America for treatment as well. And now there's no treatment that can cover her because she's relapsed, unless she can get to America in the next sort of few I think 2 months. We've got left, I think, to get her over there. They don't have the treatment in Australia. You can only get it in Barcelona, in Spain, or in America. And the prices range from, there's $2.5 million quotes we got, down to 300 grand is the bare minimum. So we started a GoFundMe page for her, and we're up to about 265 now, which is amazing. And her parents are completely blown away and grateful for everything that they've, and initially they weren't as keen on it because they didn't feel right sort of asking for help with anything. But it was we were like, no, let's just see how it goes. People are pretty amazing, in situations like this when you ask.
So if people are watching right now, is there a way we could find that page?
Yeah, if you go to, I've got it linked on my Instagram account on my bio, but you also go to www.elenorsfight.com.au. All the information's there. You can read up on her sort of story as well, and a link to the GoFundMe page. But yeah, we're getting there. We will get there, and we'll get her over, and she'll get the treatment, and at least she has a chance then. Yeah,
it's very decent of you to push a cause which seems very close to your heart. But I just wanted to say thank you so much for coming in.
No, thanks for having me.
And we are very, very excited to see your hard man work on The Savage, which should be out in cinemas pretty soon.
Yeah, I think it'll do. It's just started the festivals, the international festivals now. So once it's done a bit of a run there, I think we'll get a release here early next year, I'd say.
Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah, Madmen have picked it up, so it's in good hands. So
good. Cool. Well, a round of applause for Jake Ryan, ladies and gentlemen. This has been another sterling episode of Build Series Sydney.